it isn't just about that we want to preserve our historic area. This is about safety of the area. And I would hate to see a major accident up at the corner of East Seward and Columbia to really draw this to people's attention. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Seeing none, thank you.
Okay. Want me to write my name on it?
Yes, please. Next person, you're welcome to come up.
I'm Jan Matsky, and I live at 15 Seward Street, the corner of Columbia and Seward. Of course, we see the traffic on Columbia, and as Marcia said, 6,000 a day. Widening East Seward Street, you could make it as wide as the Tennessee River. We're just down there, it's very wide. And it still wouldn't solve the problem at the corner. All the people backing up. I don't know where the planning was when Ridge Run was built. That was the opportunity to put a north, south, and that I'm assuming was the county. You have to work with the county. Why should the county care about the traffic in Seward? I'm a member of the county. The hospital is on Columbia. It's waiting to have a big accident on Columbia. Those cars come so fast. We have seen Columbia pounded to death by all the dump trucks that went up and down when Eastridge was built. Then it was resurfaced over the brick, not in a good way. It wasn't that long before potholes and everything again. Last time they did it, it was better. Make this a project that is right and good for all the people to exit Ridge Run and this new project. It was suggested last night that some in our group are against progress or growth. That couldn't be further than the truth. Our activities in the past prove that. But how much growth? Well, thank you to Mr. Butcher, who told us the plan is 1% a year. That's very reasonable. That's a safety, and that's a good kind of growth, not a mushroom type of thing all at once. I think working with the county is very, very important, and you have to do this north-south. It should have been done as soon as Ridge Run was built, because one little road west, they all want to go downtown or north on Columbia, and it's too much of a bottleneck. And you look at the high school, soon the wellness center, the middle school, the ballparks, everything is north, and that's the answer. One suggestion that I made was close the roundabout west exit down there, at least time being. That at least cuts off. People would have to go out and then in. I wouldn't close it eastbound. I wouldn't make that neighborhood just a closed neighborhood. You need to get fire trucks and emergency things down into Ridge Run. Going out to the highway would take longer. And so that at least would solve the problem too at the corner, so that people aren't backed up on East Seward Street to get on Columbia. That would be a temporary solution, perhaps until you get a north-south road going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Jan's signing in and Al's getting ready to report. What Jan referred to, for those that weren't at the Planning Commission last night, is in our comprehensive plan, we've kind of defined what we're looking at for growth to build out the comprehensive plan. And it was identified as 1%, correct, Jonathan and Mike? 1% growth. And I reiterated to the members of the Planning Commission last night and those that were present that if you took the 2010 census data and you added 1% every single year growth to that, you hit, I believe, the exact number we ended up at 2020 for the census. And so 1% growth is essentially the last decade of growth for the city of Seward, and keeping at approximately that rate. The number of houses will be more, obviously as you get bigger, 1% becomes a little bit more. But that's approximately what we're looking at, that's what we've seen, that's what the plan was designed for. So when we talk about controlled growth as a catchphrase, smart growth, that's what we're referring to. So,
Al, welcome.
Al Underwood, 535 Chestnut Circle. Going back to when we developed Valley View Estates, the state made us put a left turn lane and it had nothing to do with traffic study. It had nothing to do with traffic counts. It was safety. And now when you're coming down the hill, you about got to close your eyes and hope you don't get rear-ended. So, and the traffic's going to get a lot worse, especially if you guys do something with East Seward Street, which I don't blame them either. But that's going to send all the traffic down Willow and down Evergreen. That's all it's going to do if you close that roundabout. So we're going to have the same complaint that East Seward has. So we need to figure that out. And when you take East Seward Street to the Highway 34, you can't see anybody coming from the west. So you know that the state's gonna have a fit about that. I don't know. And you talk about the culvert being undersized, the state determined the size of the culvert that left our subdivision. A lot of that had to do with the guy that owned John Deere was complaining every day to the state. And so they determined the size of that culvert, so it wasn't undersized. Kinda upsets me that I'm hearing that, I guess. It was developed the way the state made us do it. So now you're gonna make it bigger, so there's gonna be more water leaving the area than there was before, basically, is what you're telling me. Yes.
and I don't think the purpose, because we can rehash the past all we want, and I don't think the purpose is to dig in that. It's to look at what we have right now, and I think we would all agree that the current detention cell is not to the level that we need it. One portion is silted in, the other.
Why is that? Because it's from the farm ground to the east. It has ruined our detention pond. It's
But-
not our subdivision that has ruined it.
But it's also been that the same amount of stormwater that lands up on that farm is the same amount of stormwater that's been falling up there
But
for 100
The
years.
reason it's gotta get dug out is because of the farm ground, the guy that, well, Bob owns it now,
Yep.
but the farmer that farmed it, I mean, that's why it's full. And that's why it needs to be cleaned out. It has nothing to do with our subdivision. It's always been from that other area, so.
And again, I don't think the purpose is to lay blame on anybody or anything else. We're just trying to provide
I understand.
solutions and engineered solutions based on today's technology and the way that we do everything.
I understand that, but I really think that there should be a right turn lane coming down the hill, because the traffic, especially if we close Seward Street, Singleton's gonna get all the people coming down Willow from the first phase, until you guys figure something out about that.
And the other one that was discussed that, and it is recent to our knowledge with our meeting with NDOT on Highway 15, is at the stakeholder meeting, they reported to us that the portion that are within the city limits, we can control that speed limit, which will relate to some of our stuff with the bike trail and things like that in the future. But as the city expands east, we can begin to slow traffic down, and we can dictate that and try to reduce speeds. So then those deaccelerations to turn into Evergreen and on East Seward can be more controlled. But we have to have that all annexed into the city and then put that through with permitting to the NDOT. But ultimately, hopefully those elements, but design elements will still always be NDOT approved. You can request them, they'll take a look at them, but at the end of the day, that is to their determination. So, because I'm one of them. I'm all in favor. If they'll give us as much as we can for safety, I don't think anybody would argue against it, and we would try to implement it as much as we could. Because who doesn't want safety within reason? I mean,
Just adding lights on East Seward Street to the highway is gonna make a big difference, and if we can get a turn lane put in there, we will. We'll just have to keep chirping in their ear until either they get tired of
I
us.
had to pay for my turn lane.
What's that?
They didn't help us at all. I had to pay for ours.
No.
And I don't anticipate anything we do on there now they'll help us with.
No, it's
They
I'm
pay
talking
for
about
their 2 lanes, and we're responsible for the rest.
I just meant as far as getting permission or to be able to do that. so.
Well, you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
about the state doing it, they won't do it, they'll want you to do it.
But they'll also tell you to do it. They may come back when we say, we don't want a turn lane here, or we don't want this, and say, no, the warrants say this, you're gonna go do it, now go put that turn lane in, or we're gonna close your access. So, we're used to that when we developed the rail campus, they dictated and said, you're gonna do this and you're not gonna do that. It's their highway, and so,
I'm just concerned, I mean,
Yeah.
Seward Street's, the first time 10 people are waiting in line to turn onto North Columbia, they're all gonna start going the other way. So that's just common sense. I mean, they're all gonna come down Evergreen or Willow, so they're gonna have the same problem. Until we get a different road going somewhere. So, anyway.
Thanks, Al.
Quick question. So, to reduce speed, we have the ability, if that is in our annexation. If it's not within our annexation, does the county have the ability to determine that, or then that becomes the highway?
usually it's the state.
It's the state that ends up
Yes.
determining.
And again, every discussion we've ever had on speed limits, before I heard it murmured out of that giant group of NDOT people sitting in the Civic Center the other day, I'd always been under the assumption, and Mike's shaking his head as well on the projects he's worked on, that if it came to the highway, they will tell you what it is. They put up all the signage. I don't replace signs on the highway, they do that. And we kind of were like aghast when they said it. We're like, are you sure? And, I mean, we had 10 different department heads in there, and none of us thought that was accurate, but that's what they told us. Because our biggest concern when we were thinking about it is the proposed trail crossing on Highway 15 on the north end. Because that speed limit is ridiculous up there. Even if you're just trying to turn off Whaley Road, it's ridiculous, or Pinewood. And so we were discussing that, and discussing a crossing for the high school and some other elements, and they're like, yeah, it's in the city limits, you guys can slow that down if you want. And we're like, what? Seriously, we've never heard that. I've never heard that in working in government, municipal government for a decade. So that's a new one for us, and if, we'll hold them to it, because there's plenty of places that Seward residents would like to see some speed limit changes for safety purposes.
45. That's the, yeah.
So,
Welcome.
Welcome, hello. My name is Joe Mazurek. I live at 140 East Seward Street. I lived on East Seward now for about 28 years. As a matter of fact, 28 years, perfect. Some of the things that I'm sure many of the council members here have probably gotten letters from us, and we've attended meetings last year with Greg and so forth, discussing the traffic problems. The thing about our group is that we're not against this development. I mean, we know Seward's gonna grow. It's gonna grow north, east, it's gonna find its direction, and it's gonna hit that goal and go. What we are concerned about is our little street is not only a residential street, but it's being treated more like a commercial street at this point. I mean, we have, up until this point, even without this construction, we've got semis, we've got concrete trucks, you name it, we've got it going down that street. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you're on Columbia and Seward going either north, south, or straight ahead, chances are that somebody's gonna come around that corner from 34 going up north and wanting to either go down our street and not being able to clear the two cars at that corner, or actually not even being able to make the turn because you're sitting there waiting to get into traffic. So you're taking this small residential street, and now all of a sudden, I don't know its designation in terms of what it is in the city, but it's being used for everything. And besides being, the preservation of our bricks, not too many years ago, we had the sewer line that ran right straight down our middle of the street. And when the construction of that bridge was being put in, we had concrete trucks and these guys jacking these 80,000-pound concrete trucks, bouncing until they caved that pipe in. So that was an expense that was an unnecessary expense. Ideally, what we would like is not only to have the street designated as a residential street, and making sure that truck limits, weight limits, and all of the rules that go with this, including speed limits, being enforced. And if you do have a development like this, which apparently it's gonna go through no matter what, needed or not needed, that's a moot point at this thing. You are building something that's got a potential of 171 buildings, and you don't have legitimate, connections to that little source. I mean, you've got Ridge Run right now creating problems for us in terms of traffic volume, and I'm sure, on their way home, they don't want to stop on Columbia and Seward not being able to make a turn. So this is escalating and is going the wrong way. This has got to be solved. And ideally, return our street to being a residential street, find a way where traffic is limited to people who live there and have lived there for a long time, and hopefully like to preserve it. And you know what? We're not against the development, but you can't let it go and just chew up farm ground and say, we'll build it and they'll come. Well, you gotta give them roads to come, and you gotta make sure that they be able to get to that point. And this is not an item that hasn't been addressed before. We've been trying to get a meeting with city council to talk about this, and Greg, you've done a great job even last year, sitting down and actually listening to us. Because up until that point, there was sort of, that kind of an attitude. And I think to a certain point, that attitude is gonna maybe change because you realize that it's an actual problem. Up until this point, you've negated. So it wasn't a problem, because it wasn't your problem. But this is important, guys. Don't drop the ball on this, because you're gonna mess up this project. You're gonna make something turn, you're gonna have everybody hating you. Besides us on East Seward Street. And I'm just telling you, you're creating enemies. Every day you create an enemy. Just, use your wisdom. Any questions for me?
I actually do have a question. So, if this gets passed tonight,
Right,
because you stated that you weren't against the development.
right.
Would you be mad at me?
If you made the decision not based on anything that's going to solve the problem, this is what happens with this city council. What he brought up about a plan that was designed in 2007, and nobody did crap about it until now.
That's the county.
Oh, that's the county, okay, but still, that could happen with the city too. You have a developer come in, he says, I wanna build homes, but you don't really have a legit north and south route except for Highway 15 and Columbia, which you've already got a problem on. You know that East Seward Street, if you pave it and it goes up past our house on top of the street narrowing to a small area, 15-foot wide, and now potentially in the short term, you've got construction happening and more concrete trucks, and where do you think those concrete trucks are gonna go? Now, I know the developer is saying we're gonna find a way around somewhere and everything else. It's not gonna happen. It was brought up in yesterday's meeting. What was it said? Path of least resistance. The concrete, I've been even told by members from this city council, or at least the street department, when I called them, they said the reason why concrete trucks do that is because their GPS tells them to do that. So you've got a local guy that's been driving trucks here for a whole lifetime, doesn't know that East Seward Street is 15 feet wide, and he's jockeying 80,000 pounds down the street? He doesn't need GPS. How many guys over here need GPS to get around town? Seriously, guys, this is crap. Think about this before you do this.
Sir,
Yes.
I have a question. If you would like us to make a designation
To a residential street.
to a residential street, okay, that's one thing. What else? I mean, what can we do tonight with this project tonight for you? This is preliminary, so we can approve it when it comes back, say this is what we wanna see, we can
Mhm.
do all sorts of things. So if we did that, what else?
Greg discussed this a little bit yesterday. He had, I think you mentioned 3 solutions to this, or at least potential solutions.
Essential.
Temporary or even long-term. And either way, you're gonna need a temporary solution once you start building those 35 homes
That's
per
what I'm
year.
interested in hearing. What's your temporary solution?
Something's gotta be done
Right.
in that roundabout.
There's a lot. That's why we were there for 3 hours last night.
So, okay.
And let's track it back to something Joe mentioned. I met along with some members of the city council And a lot of the neighbors we see here along East Seward, Lindell, and some on Jackson, to start last summer, the discussion of what to do about this issue. Specifically, we have identified in the 1 and 6 year plan to do something with the surfacing, even if it's repair it and lay the bricks back down. We have to make sure that that roadway is of a quality for residential, any traffic. And this roadway is identified, Lindell's identified. We had to post today that, if you saw our Facebook, that we're getting ready to do a survey on Lindell. We had to make sure nobody thought we were doing anything else other than that. Just trying to keep you informed. And I know Lynn's down there, so. But we met with them and we discussed a lot of these issues, and we discussed a lot of localized issues too, like the truck traffic. Seward Street carries a lot of trucks. People don't like the downtown turns. They try to find other ways and they sneak out and they go, well, my GPS or whatever else
Right.
tells me to just keep going straight. And so one of the things that the traffic committee worked on after that was looking at the designation. Can we stick a sign right at the top of East Seward that says, no trucks over this size, whatever it may be? And that's when Mike identified that we report to the state
Right.
that the road is listed as a
Collective.
collector street, which it should be residential.
Should be residential.
And so by that collector designation goes all the way up to the city limit. And some of that comes from, I don't know if there were plans when you were originally looking at concreting the roadway, way back when, or whenever that was planned under previous administrations or anything else. Those designations help you utilize state funds or federal funds. That's one of the reasons you would do that. We wanted to make sure that we didn't jeopardize or somehow mess up the path with designating that down, to get it down to a residential street, posting it for truck traffic not to go through there, and then somehow we're misreporting our lane miles or the information to the state as we qualify. Is that a correct interpretation of that, Mike? Along with discussions of speed bumps and speed limits and all kinds of other things that we could do to assist with the speeding issue up there. Well, now this is morphed a little bit further in regards to looking at ways to alleviate exit traffic out of those neighborhoods that were established to the west, or to the east.
So there are actions we can take.
I think
Now.
the ones that we talked about now, and here's what they are. One of them is close East Seward down there temporarily. One you can do temporary and find out what people do. We've talked about, if you close East Seward at the bottom of the hill at Lindell, you essentially just turn it into a neighborhood. You're only going there if you're gonna go visit somebody who live there.
Right.
That's it. Nobody else is going down there. We would have to probably post a no outlet because those same GPS truck drivers are gonna try and shoot down there. But post no outlet, post no trucks, whatever we can do. We can do that temporarily, see what people do. But I said, don't do that in a vacuum. Because there was a motion last night to temporarily, potentially, brewing. And my recommendation is there are other interested people that aren't in this room last night at the library. I think the residents in Valley View, the residents in Ridge Run, the rural residents that live on East Seward, and those on Lindell and the cul-de-sac to the south, Jackson, they all need to be a part of it, or at least get an opportunity to come to the table and have their say. And then a decision needs to be made. So it was a little bit premature to try and do anything, and I would make that same recommendation tonight. Because I just see mostly the same faces I saw last night.
But
Few new
that,
friends.
but that would not affect putting the signage of no trucks and putting it to residential,
No, and I still want Mike to go through that so that we're not violating anything,
pending
but
our
Yep.
due diligence. Okay, so those are the two very concrete things we can do tonight,
or
ask for tonight.
Jan's recommendation, which is you could cut down the traffic by half by just reducing one of the in or outbound lanes on East Seward from the roundabout. Now, I will tell you right now, we have some enterprising people entering that roundabout, and when there was garbage trucks and post office people, they still somehow managed to drive the wrong way around that thing and get around them.
We all love traffic circles.
I'm forewarning you, I might put a trail camera down there and watch you guys, but for the most part though, you could alleviate half of your issue and see what that's like, rather than just fully shutting it off and,
Well, it seems fair to the people living on Seward Street to do some sort of mitigation here. But I just wanna find out what's doable, and then what needs to be a longer term, more people involved, a little more discussion.
Just for the record, this has been a problem for many years. Back when, what was it, Bob Elwood was mayor, and, I remember this was a piece of conversation with the 1 in 6 year plan and the brick streets and the speed limits and everything else. So in 28 years, not much has happened in terms of improving the problem. So what this development is doing is making you rethink that it's not gonna go away. It's gonna get worse. And that, in a way, is sort of good, because it may solve the problem finally, because somebody's gonna pay attention to it.
My question is this is a 4-year-old plan, if I've done the math correctly, and in that, which one of these roads in this development specifically is in our 1 to 6 year plan?
East Seward. So, what Councilmember Hendricks was referring to is, we have a plan, inside our comprehensive plan, we have proposed, none of these are concrete, none of them are laid out, except some of them that already exist. We have a map here, and in that map, it shows maybe some, what we call collectors, right? I always want to use my terminology as collector, they're not arterials.
Arterials are blue. They're
Yeah.
fire companies.
And so it denotes Bluff Road as an arterial in 252nd. Do you have this on your magical machine over there? You wanna hit some lights over there, Derek, on just our front end? And go ahead and zoom in for me just on Bluff Road and 252nd. So, oops, sorry.
It's empty.
Yeah, that's what my kids tell me too. So Bluff Road here, 252nd, go out just a little bit, Mike, just slightly, so we can see East Seward Street down here. So the identified one right now, this is East Seward Street. And this is identified as a collector currently, it's identified a collector in our plan. And then this is a proposed, it's just throwing something against the wall, it's not defined, they don't have names, they don't align with anything else. But what it could look like to make some interconnections, the green you see here is trail. So you don't get confused that we're gonna ram something weird through here. This is the old railroad right of way, if you actually follow it and can track it. And then, as we always talk about, we want to look at spurs that come off that to interconnect neighborhoods to the main trail, if that were to ever be a possibility. Your closest roadway that goes north to south in this that doesn't exist currently is a proposed one here that loops around to the east of Ridge Run and our rural neighbors over along East Seward. And so, to get to this point, we have to develop far enough over, and then obviously, there's nothing in this plan, and if you look through the plan, there's nothing in our long-term plan to develop any of this. Right now, this is just acreages and farm ground. And so, the discussions after we met with the residents of East Seward last summer, actually, was starting to look at any other options to connect this. And I said it last night, I'll reiterate it tonight, what we always try to do in looking at utilizing taxpayer dollars for a project this big is you really want to develop a roadway that can be developed. Looking any further to the west of Current Ridge Run, Valley View, we're in the Plum Creek floodplain. We built a good portion of Road to Nowhere, Carroll K. It is right on the border of that, and so the eastern portion can't be developed. If some enterprising person wanted to way along in the future, you probably could push some development through. But again, getting too close to this area, potentially, while it provides us a nice roadway, it doesn't allow us to develop anything along it, which then creates tax base to help pay for the long-term care, maintenance, and all the other things that we have to do with the roadway. That's why this potentially, or any other roadway connection in a developable land is better. Short term, 252nd and Bluff Road, these are already established roadways. You don't need to acquire much right of way or any right of way. To develop those, hard surface them, and then use them as through streets. But as Joe said, and I said last night, it is the path of least resistance.
Right.
Unfortunately, people will go where they think is the fastest route, the shortest route, the route where I have to deal with the least people. Some people that live way up north will run out on Waverly Road and get out to Matsky and head down and shoot off to Lincoln or Milford or the interstate. But a lot of people that are down in here, if they're going north, unless there's maybe a connection, are still, until they get more development and things push them this way, or we do it naturally or forcefully, they're still gonna sneak through. This person that lives right, right on the edge of Ridge Run, it may not backtrack all the way to here to get back to here when they can, or to here. That's just traffic flows. But any sort of relief you can provide, these are your outlets and things you would be looking for. And so this is the kind of stuff that we high level discussed last night and that is identified in our comp plan. So that kind of gives you an outline of it. Bluff Road, the reason that we kind of mentioned this, in our current 1-year 6 plan that's being designed right now for bid this year, from East Ridge all the way down to the current Carroll K, actually at the end of the bridge. This will be completely redesigned with a trail connection, curb and gutter, all the elements that we need. And then a secondary project is just the bridge. And the reason we're designing the bridge is obviously it's in bad shape, but also because we're going to try and target that for infrastructure dollars that are available. It's one of the primary items that are listed in the federal infrastructure project list. There's not money floating around for bridges right now. And so if we can tag one bridge in the city, this is the one we want to do. Well, now it's a short run to look at doing some sort of surfacing to try and make your connection or work with the county out here and bring it around. That's a high level of what we kind of talked about last night. And is identified in our current plan. This plan, though, needs to be in cohesion with the county as well. And that was the discussions that Doc Wallman asked me to initiate after last night with the county.
Well, that has to take us to the road to nowhere, because honestly, you can't pull all that traffic down Hillcrest.
No, from Hillcrest down to here, or wherever it may be, there's, again, I don't want to scare up a bunch of people that are private landowners up there. There's no way to do this, aside from 252nd and Bluff Road, where you do not go acquire right-of-way or some negotiated property. And that was one of the things we talked about, is if you're going to cut through this, there has to be wherewithal by the county or the city or both to say, this is a public need, and we are going to use the right of eminent domain and pay these landowners a fair price for this property and acquire right-of-way to make this work. Because again, if you want to make that connection, this isn't potentially developing anytime soon. It may not develop, it's not even in our comp plan, which is a 10-year plan, and I don't think it's in the long term up in this area. Predominantly, that's also because of utilities. Getting water surface to this, our plan is to properly service this with water, and then all of the wastewater goes downhill, and the wastewater plant, as you know, is down here. And so this works well for us. Get a little further over, we start to get some topography issues. That's when you get into lift stations and things like that, which are expensive. But anything up here is not going to develop in the long term unless you have somebody that's enterprising, wants to buy it all up and start turning it into housing, and also is going to pay to solve the problem of utility. Extend water mains, lift stations to get wastewater out of the topography.
Greg,
Well,
since
Okay, go ahead, Sid.
since you have the map up, this is addressing the East Seward situation. Since you have that mic, Mike, could you blow this up a little bit? This is something that was brought up last night. This area here, yeah, center that, blow it up a little bit. So I think it was Tom last night threw out an idea that I was thinking about today, addressing Tom asked me.
Yeah, I agree.
Addressing the East Seward Street, it's obvious that the north and south issue is a big deal, and it's a very long-range plan, and it's not gonna be that convenient. But I was thinking about something that would address both Willow, Evergreen, and East Seward, is extending East Seward. This is all owned by the city. I just looked at the Seward County GIS. Extending this over to here to that railroad right away, in giving people access to the highway down here.
Okay,
That would give people an option to not go that way, and it would give them an option to not go that way. Does it solve the north and south issue? No. But something like that, which is totally built on city property, would alleviate people going down to Evergreen and Willow, and would alleviate people, or give them an option not to go on East Seward Street.
right. And
Yeah.
since we're always talking about, you know, the problem lasting a very long time, 20 years or whatever, you know, that's what we don't want. We don't want this problem to continue another 20 years or whatever. Because actually, 28 years ago, it was a problem. Except not that bad, because at that time, there was that bridge that's there on Seward Street was a little one-lane bridge, and people avoided it. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to go on the bridge.
That's a pretty cool bridge.
The
It
idea,
is a pretty cool
the
bridge.
idea that we talked about, that maybe I shared with Tom, was, proposed that coming out of the roundabout is arching around basically what's just farm ground that's owned by the city, and then following adjacent to the trail, and then utilizing our public access already for the parade of flags. Because again, our whole NDOT issue, they don't like to let you have access to the highway. Well, we do have an access to the highway here. That's a public access. And so looking at taking that down, again, without a long-term solution north and south, this is a really expensive road that ultimately, you'll have people coming in and out, but you probably need to figure out something else that goes up there. And that should be part of the plan. Because this is, I don't know the length on that, but I'm guessing 800,000?
Yeah, that's a fair number, yeah.
800,000, just looking at what we paid for Carroll K, and that was already 2 years ago when
So
that
it's
stood out.
similar, built in over the old floodplain area,
Yep.
essentially.
It can be done. We have roadways, just like East Seward's in the floodplain. We have roadways in the floodplain. Sometimes it's gonna be underwater, but I saw a gazillion roads in this town underwater in 2019, and they were fine. We just had to clean them off. Pretty much in good shape. And so, but it's gonna be underwater sometimes. We'll just deal with that, just like we do on East Seward Street. That's one potential, but you still have to solve your north-south and get them
Yes.
out this way. Because all they're gonna do is, Tom is just gonna see all these magical people go down here and come up here and go right by his house.
Mhm.
And make that 6,000, 7,000, and that 7,000, 8,000, and that 8,000, 9,000, if we don't solve the north-south problem. And it could be part of this. It could somehow shoot up there. But again, you're looking at putting roadway that's, and even here, is undevelopable. You can't develop next to it, so you don't get that tax base to help recoup those costs and cover those maintenance costs over time.
But you're picking up a tax base when you put in this development.
Yes.
You got seven portions of this development, even if they developed at, 35 houses per year or whatever, you're just keeping it with, you're bringing in tax dollars. And you're getting the growth of your city, you're getting your 1% goal, you're getting people to come in because we're a bedroom community, and you're solving the problem of everybody hating you on our street.
But we're also all gonna gain the roadways in there, unlike Ridge Run. These will all be our roads, and we're gonna have to pay for the maintenance and snow removal and everything else for them.
Excellent, good job, Joe. Tom Ansky, 116 South Columbia, Seward, Nebraska. Just wanna say thanks to everyone here. I know you guys are, Nebraska won tonight. I don't know, Concordia's up by 2, I think. I don't know what the score is now, but, my dad sat here for how many years? And I appreciate your time as a son. You know, he missed a lot of stuff just for Seward. You know, I love Seward, had the opportunity many times to move away as a pharmaceutical rep. I knew I wanted to live here. I had promotions. My brother moved to Kansas City. I knew I wanted to live here. In fact, I rented an apartment in Grand Island, never lived there because I got downsized and paid rent there for 6 months because I knew I wanted to live in Seward. That's what Seward means to me. I wish I would have paid attention to Mr. Harpum's class because my D in speech probably isn't going to go too well, but it worked pretty well last night. I was hoping Bob would stand up. You know, we're not against this, but I was hoping Bob would stand up tonight and said, yes, I talked to Dave Jones today. He's going to give us a route right through his land to 252, but obviously he didn't. You know, he's got his 1.4 million, and good for them. Daryl's here tonight, our commissioner. for our ward, and hopefully he's paying attention tonight, because we really need something done for East Seward Street. These are the faces. Could O'Brien's come out here? They got the kids out here hiding. Come out in the front row, please. If the judge lets us approach the bench, that'd be great. Thank you, sir. These are the faces. Come here. We got Jude and Hannah. We got the little one. Ben, come here, please. Please, come here. These are the faces of East Seward Street. These are the kids that live down the street. You got Greg. We confirmed they did a traffic study 2 years ago. Come on, come on, come on, come on. You gotta learn. You gotta learn. You gotta learn. Come here, kids. Oh, you don't have to. Come here. Emily can bring them out. Come here. Here, there. This is the kids that live on the bottom of the hill. They're always swinging. They're always running around. Come on. Absolutely. Come on. What's your name? This is Ben. What's your name? Jude. And this is Hannah. Terrible names. Like that. Anyways, these are the faces. They live down at the bottom of the hill. There's 600 cars coming up 2 years ago, coming up Columbia or East Seward Street. There's 5,000, 6,000 going down Columbia Street. Guess how many cars are coming down the road right here, the main road? Guess what the traffic study was? Greg, what do you tell us?
Is it 9?
I think it's 9,000.
9,000 cars versus 5,000 going down to a hospital, going to Concordia, going to the schools. Could you pull up the map of Bob's Aspen Builders, Prairie View, whatever fancy name they got for it, Prairie Flower? Can approach the bench here, sir. So right now they just only have 2 outlets right here up the north. Two outlets going to the north. You have 171 right now. Oh, but they said they're gonna put it in installments or whatever, in phases. 30. Last night it was 20. Now it's up to 40. So you got 170 houses in here. That's 300 cars, possibly apartments now. He mentioned last night apartments. So you're putting all that traffic. Everything's going north. Where's that going? It's going up our street, East Seward Street. So we got the O'Brien family there, 400, 300 more cars coming up, from 600 to over 1,000 on East Seward Street. It's absolutely ridiculous. We're not against this. I was hoping Bob would come here and say, yes, Dave Jones has given us a little bit here, and we're going to work on this. We're going to get with the city, and we want to work on outlets. We want to work on the traffic. But no, he hasn't. Also, there was 3 things. I'm going to ask you, I hope you guys vote no. I'm asking you to vote no on the preliminary of fixing these roads or fixing this problem. The conclusion, or the answers to is, obviously close East Seward Street was brought up last night. That's a great idea. Let's close East Seward Street and see what happens. How about the road to 252 straight north, if Dave Jones would give us something? Or even what I brought up, and we talked with my mom and Mr. Butcher, is a roadway from roundabout, from the flags, from the dog park to the flags, to the exit. Move the parking lot up. You can have the parking lot there, and we can still have the exit, or whatever you want to call it, right there. This is where my heart is not doing good in speech. But anyways, like my mom said, sometime it'll come in handy. This is where it's coming in handy. So that's the 3 things I'd like you guys to vote no. Vote no until this is resolved. This is great. Seward's growing, like everybody said, but until this is resolved, we can't do this project. We really can't. It's gonna get tabled. You guys might table this tonight and put it on for the next month and next month. But we gotta resolve the roads. And that's where we're at. These are the faces of East Seward Street. Been here for 50 years, pretty much my whole life, the O'Briens. Do the right thing. Do the right thing for Seward. What is the right thing? The right thing is finding the correct access, not everything going up East Seward Street. Again, I appreciate you guys' time, appreciate your volunteer, everything you guys do. That's it, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Question,
Yes. Pardon?
not for you, Tom, for Judge. For this preliminary plat, that pretty much gives us the opportunity to say, hey, Bob, we need you to fix this, change this, blah, 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 and then he comes back with a final? Or if we approve this tonight, that's it?
If you, this was discussed last night, if you approve the preliminary, you've essentially green-lighted the project.
Okay.
Looking right behind you at my planning director, it essentially gives you a start. The final, since it's a phased project, is to ensure that the final matches what you put in the ground. Determinations will be made, you'll say, this doesn't work, we had to reroute the water main when we got in the ground. Okay, what is the final plat, what did you put in the ground that we take up and stick up at the Register of Deeds office that says, this is it? We, and Doc Wallman can mention, we've done a lot in the past where we approve them in the same night, the preliminary and the final plat together, because we've done it as a piecemeal, small little pieces, and then they become disjointed. It isn't until recently with Fairway Woods, Shoal Creek, what you see before you, that the city's been able to take on larger ones and see the full context in a preliminary plat, rather than the puzzle pieces put together that become disjointed. Your grading plans, rather than taking something that has one large grading plan that incorporates everything, well, here's a grading plan for these 20, and here's another grading plan for these 25. And I think that's some of our issues that we experience with a lot of our storm drainage issues on a lot of stuff we built in like the 90s and the early 2000s. Where we're going back in and putting in all the drainage that the city had to pay for to cover it. It's because it's all just piecemeal together. And that's how the city was growing at that time. That's what we could undertake and build within a year and have the market to handle. So if you greenlight this tonight, it is basically greenlit to go out and start grading, and then the final is what ended up in the ground. Is that accurate, Tim?
Yeah, the difference between this and the final, all this says is, okay, this is what we're going with. Now on the final is where we get all the particulars. The streets and the water and the sewer, they do all that design on the final and include it with the final. Come back, you're gonna see basically the same footprint, but now you're gonna see all the infrastructure with it.
Very good. All right, welcome.
Hi, my name is Alexis Scribner. I live at 110 East Seward Street. I'm the house across from Tom and catty corner from Jan and Chuck. I also run and operate East Hills Inn and Suites. I see the potential for traffic issues on both Highway 34, in addition to our small street issues that we have on East Seward Street. I'm for growth in our city as a business owner, and I also help to be the first person to develop the Seward Dog Park. So I'm obviously for growth in our city and for opportunities that betterment and improve our community. But I would like to encourage you all not to put the cart before the horse, which I think is where we are right now. So when you had your streets up there, I was not here last night, so I missed all the discussion about the road from the dog park out to the Parade of Flags, which is a great idea. There's already a speed issue on Highway 34 going out of town. When you hit Columbia, everybody thinks they've left town. That's a 35 zone, increases to a 45 zone as you approach Evergreen there, and then you get to 65. I realize when you eventually annex all of that, you get speed control. But right now, it's already an issue right there too, and it's a large one. It's also a narrowing there around the curve, and you're going to increase traffic. So again, north to south is the big issue. The proposed road on East Seward Street going to Bluff is great, but it needs to go all the way to Waverly as well. And I think those things are your top priority, opposed to our East Seward Street, like Joe and everybody has said before me. But again, don't put your cart before your horse. Don't make Highway 34 a bigger issue than it is now. Don't make East Seward Street a bigger issue than it is now. Unfortunately, there's only a few businesses on that curve. Me, Cross, and Sons, and you got the Parade of Flags and a pole, right? But it just because there's few of us doesn't mean there isn't a lot of traffic. With the motel, we have daily traffic, and that's a dangerous curve as it is. Something that needs to be addressed, and the state has looked at many times, and again, it's a put-off project, just like the widening of the interstate and the widening of Matsky Highway, okay? So all those things got pushed back, just like probably some of these other things that the county obviously has on their back burner. So please, let's just put the right things forward. We do need growth and improvement in our city, I'm for that, but we need to make sure doing it in the correct order.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come before the council?
I just wanted to say one more thing.
Once you've spoken, you can't come back up again, I'm sorry. Does anyone else like to speak who hasn't spoken yet? Welcome, Mr. Lee.
My name is Ken Lieb. I live at 2592 East Seward Road. The end of the road, better known as Seward Street now, or soon to be. It's pretty hard to follow the Matskis.
You can do it.
We haven't been here as long as them, but I've been a resident in Seward for 45 years. My wife and I both are natives of Nebraska, grew up in small towns, rural farming communities. We went to school here, we got jobs here. We've worked hard while we've been here. We looked for acreages in 3 states for 20 years before we found ours. And it came about overnight. Couldn't believe it. My wife said every time she went that way, this is such a beautiful road, such a beautiful place, I'd like to live there someday. It's a scenic road. We think of it as the beginning, not the end. Not a day goes by that somebody doesn't call or stop and wanting to know if they can buy the place. It's never been for sale. But it's been there for 100 years. The house is over 100 years old. We completely remodeled the inside of it. And we put blood, sweat, and tears in there. And worked. I look around the room and I see all these parents. My wife and I are bus drivers. We have hauled your kids, your grandkids, all over the state and are still doing. The bus is out there to leave at 6:15 in the morning. We worked hard. And all we wanted was to be left alone. I ask you not to pin the